If you sign that contract tonight, you won't own your company by morning. The words were barely louder than a whisper, but they made Ethan Caldwell stop cold with his pen still hovering above the paper. The private dining room at the Grand Bell fell strangely quiet beneath the soft clinking of crystal glasses and the distant sound of rain tapping against the tall Manhattan windows. Across the table, Sheikh Rahman Al Fayed sat perfectly still in his dark navy robe, his sharp eyes fixed not on Ethan, but on the young waitress standing beside him with a silver coffee pot trembling slightly in her hands. Naomi Brooks quickly lowered her gaze as if she regretted speaking at all. "Excuse me?" Ethan asked slowly. His voice was calm, but something dangerous moved underneath it. Naomi swallowed. "Your translator," she said softly. "He's not saying what the sheik actually means." The translator laughed immediately. Victor Hale leaned back in his chair with the confidence of a man who had spent years inside billionaire boardrooms. "Sir, I apologize," he said with a polished smile. "I think the waitress misunderstood a foreign phrase or two." A few executives chuckled quietly. Naomi remained silent. She simply poured coffee into Ethan's cup with careful hands, avoiding every eye in the room except one, the sheik's, and strangely, the old man looked relieved. Ethan noticed it instantly. He had built a $9 billion energy empire by reading people faster than markets. Tiny details mattered. A twitch, a glance, pause too long before an answer. And right now, his translator looked nervous. Ethan slowly set down his Mont Blanc pen. "Translate exactly what he just said," he told Victor. Victor adjusted his tie. "The sheik said he accepts the revised percentages and is honored to continue the partnership." Ethan looked toward Naomi. "And what did he actually say?" The room froze. Naomi hesitated for 2 painful seconds. "He said," she whispered carefully, "a man who lies for money will eventually sell your name too." Complete silence. Even the rain outside seemed to disappear. Victor's face drained of color. Then, for the first time that night, Sheikh Rahman spoke. Directly in Arabic again, his voice deeper now, sharper. Naomi listened quietly. Her dark eyes narrowed slightly. Then she translated without hesitation. "He said your late wife used to speak Arabic much better than your translator does." Ethan's breath caught instantly. Nobody in that room should have known about Claire. Nobody. Not anymore. The air inside the private dining room suddenly felt too heavy to breathe. Ethan Caldwell stared at Naomi Brooks as though the young waitress had just opened a locked door nobody else knew existed. Claire. His late wife. Very few people even remembered she had once worked in diplomatic translation before her death 5 years earlier. Ethan had erased most traces of that part of his life after the accident. Too painful. Too personal. Yet somehow this quiet woman standing beside the coffee service knew exactly which language Claire used to whisper to their daughter before bedtime. Victor forced out a nervous laugh that sounded painfully fake now. "Sir, this is becoming inappropriate," he said quickly. "I recommend we continue the signing." But Ethan did not move. His sharp gray eyes remained fixed on Naomi. "How do you know my wife spoke Arabic?" Naomi hesitated. The golden chandelier light reflected softly against the silver tray in her hands. "Because your daughter still listens to her recordings," she answered quietly. Ethan froze again, completely this time. Nobody outside his penthouse knew about the old cassette recordings Claire left behind. Lily played them almost every night when she could not sleep. Ethan slowly stood from his chair. Around the room, executives shifted uncomfortably while Victor loosened his collar. The sheik watched silently now, almost amused. "Who are you?" Ethan asked. Naomi lowered her eyes. "Just someone who listens carefully, sir." Ethan had heard thousands of answers in boardrooms across 20 years of business. Some arrogant, some rehearsed, some desperate. But this answer unsettled him more than all of them because it sounded honest. Victor suddenly interrupted again, speaking much faster now. "Sir, we are wasting valuable time over a misunderstanding from a waitress." The word waitress carried extra weight this time. Dismissive, sharp. Naomi did not react. She simply reached forward and quietly refilled the sheik's tea. Then something unexpected happened. The old billionaire spoke directly to her in Arabic once more, his deep voice calm and measured. Naomi answered instantly, smoothly, like music Ethan had not heard in years. The sheik smiled for the first time all evening. Then he turned toward Ethan and spoke in English himself. "Your wife once translated for my family in Dubai," he said softly. "This young woman speaks with the same kindness." Ethan felt his chest tighten unexpectedly. Across the room, Victor looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. But before Ethan could say another word, the private dining room door opened quietly and a small voice drifted inside. "Daddy." 8-year-old Lily Caldwell stood there holding her sketchbook against her chest, her headphones still around her neck. And the moment her eyes landed on Naomi, she stopped walking. Her face went pale. "You," Lily whispered softly. "You are the lady from the train station." Lily Caldwell clutched her sketchbook tighter against her chest as the entire room turned toward her. Ethan immediately stepped away from the table. "Lily," he said gently, surprised. "What are you doing up here?" But the little girl barely heard him. Her wide blue eyes remained fixed on Naomi Brooks. "You gave me your scarf," Lily whispered softly. Naomi looked stunned for the first time that night. "The train station," Lily continued, taking a small step forward. "3 weeks ago when it was raining." Ethan frowned slightly. He remembered that night. Lily had gotten separated from security for less than 5 terrifying minutes during a storm outside Grand Central Terminal. When Ethan finally found her, she had been wrapped in a dark gray scarf and calmly sitting beside a woman near the coffee stand. But by the time Ethan reached them, the woman had already disappeared into the crowd. "That was you?" Ethan asked quietly. Naomi nodded once, almost reluctantly. "She looked cold," she said softly. "That was all." Lily smiled suddenly. "She bought me hot chocolate too." Naomi looked embarrassed, now as though kindness itself made her uncomfortable. It was just hot chocolate. But Ethan noticed something strange. Lily was smiling more openly than she had in months. Since Claire's death, smiles from his daughter had become rare things. Small, fragile, usually gone within seconds. Yet standing beside Naomi, Lily looked calm, safe somehow. Victor cleared his throat loudly from across the room. "Sir, perhaps we should continue this discussion privately." Ethan did not even glance at him. His attention remained on Naomi entirely now. "You recognized Lily tonight?" Naomi hesitated. "Not immediately," she admitted. "But when the sheik mentioned your wife, I remembered her headphones." Lily touched the silver headphones hanging around her neck. "Mommy's tapes," she whispered. Naomi gave a small nod. Ethan felt something tighten painfully in his chest again. Claire used to record Arabic lullabies for Lily whenever business trips kept her overseas. After the accident, those old tapes became the only thing Lily would listen to before bed. Most people did not even know the language. But somehow Naomi had recognized it instantly weeks ago inside a crowded train station. The realization unsettled Ethan deeply. The sheik suddenly leaned back in his chair, studying Naomi with growing interest. "You learned Arabic academically?" he asked in English. Naomi lowered her eyes. "Partly. And the rest?" Naomi paused. Her fingers tightened slightly around the silver coffee pot. "My father spoke it at home," she answered quietly. Ethan looked at her carefully now. Every answer she gave seemed smaller than the truth hiding behind it. Before he could ask another question, Lily suddenly tugged Naomi's sleeve. "Can you still understand the tapes?" she asked hopefully. Naomi looked down at the little girl. For a second, the noise of the restaurant faded completely. "Yes," she whispered. Lily's face brightened instantly. "Daddy cannot translate them anymore," she admitted softly. Ethan looked away toward the rain-streaked windows. He had not listened to Claire's voice in almost a year. It hurt too much. Naomi noticed the silence immediately. Quiet people always notice silence. Then Lily carefully opened her sketchbook and held up a drawing. A man, a little girl, and beside them, a woman with dark curls holding an umbrella in the rain. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Ethan Caldwell stared at the drawing in Lily's hands, while the soft jazz music drifting through the restaurant suddenly felt impossibly far away. The sketch was simple, childlike, but the details hit harder than any boardroom negotiation ever had. Lily had drawn Naomi standing beside them beneath a dark umbrella, while rain poured across the page in silver pencil strokes. And strangely, Naomi looked less like a stranger in the picture than Ethan himself did. "Lily," Ethan said carefully, "when did you draw this?" "That night," she answered softly. On the car ride home. Naomi shifted uncomfortably beside the table, clearly wanting attention on anyone else. Ethan noticed it immediately. Most people leaned toward wealth, toward influence, toward him. Naomi seemed to lean away from all of it. The sheik slowly rose from his chair, adjusting the cuffs of his robe with calm elegance. "Mr. Caldwell," he said quietly, "I believe your waitress has already saved you twice tonight." Ethan looked toward Victor at once. The translator's face had become pale beneath the warm chandelier light. Tiny beads of sweat gathered near his temples now. Ethan had seen that expression before. Men wore it when numbers stopped adding up. "Open the original contract," Ethan said calmly. Victor hesitated, just for half a second. But half a second was enough. Ethan's voice hardened immediately. "Now." The room moved quickly after that. Lawyers leaned over laptops. Executives exchanged nervous glances. The sound of keyboards clicking filled the silence while Naomi quietly stepped backward toward the edge of the room, as though she hoped nobody would notice her anymore. But Ethan noticed everything now, especially her. Lily walked closer to Naomi and slipped her small hand into hers naturally, without hesitation. Naomi looked startled by the gesture. Then slowly, she smiled. It was small, barely there. But Ethan realized something painful in that moment. He had not seen genuine warmth near his daughter in years. Not since Claire. "Sir," one of the attorneys finally said, his voice tight, "the Arabic clause and the English clause do not match." Victor immediately stepped forward. "It is a formatting misunderstanding," he said too quickly. "These international contracts can become complicated." But Naomi quietly shook her head before anyone else could speak. "No," she whispered softly. "It was intentional." Victor snapped toward her. "You need to stay out of this." The sudden sharpness in his voice made Lily flinch slightly. Ethan noticed that too. His gray eyes darkened instantly. "Careful," Ethan said coldly. Victor swallowed hard. The room fell silent again. Naomi slowly looked toward Ethan, uncertainty flickering across her face. "The sheik never agreed to transfer distribution rights," she explained carefully. "Victor added those terms during translation." One attorney looked horrified. Another began rapidly turning pages. Ethan remained completely still. Too still. The kind of stillness that usually terrified people inside boardrooms. Then the sheik gave a quiet sigh and spoke softly in Arabic again. Naomi listened for a moment before translating. "He says trust is more expensive than oil." Ethan lowered his eyes briefly. Claire used to say things like that. Small sentences that somehow stayed in a room long after conversations ended. Across the table, Victor suddenly reached for his briefcase. Ethan's security team moved immediately toward him. Not aggressively, just enough to stop him from leaving. Lily looked up at Naomi then and whispered something so softly only she could hear it. Naomi's expression changed instantly. Ethan caught it from across the room. "Pain. Real pain." "What did she say?" Ethan asked quietly. Naomi looked down at Lily before answering. "She asked if I knew her mother's favorite song." Naomi Brooks looked down at Lily Caldwell for several quiet seconds before answering. The restaurant lights reflected softly in the little girl's blue eyes so painfully similar to her mother's that Ethan had to look away for a moment. "Yes," Naomi whispered gently. "I know the song." Lily's face lit up immediately. "Mommy used to sing it when it rained," she said softly. Naomi nodded once. "I remember." Ethan's head turned sharply toward her again. "How could you possibly remember that?" he asked. Naomi hesitated. The room suddenly felt smaller around them. Security quietly escorted Victor Hale toward the back office while attorneys continued reviewing contracts in tense silence. But Ethan barely noticed any of it anymore. His entire attention remained fixed on the woman standing beside his daughter. Naomi slowly set the silver coffee pot down on a nearby table. 5 years ago, she began quietly, your wife volunteered twice a week at St. Mary's Community Center in Brooklyn. Ethan frowned slightly. Claire had never mentioned the center to him. Then again, toward the end of her life, there were many things Claire stopped mentioning. They had evening language classes there, Naomi continued, for immigrant families, translation workshops, kids. Ethan stared at her carefully now. Tiny memories flickered back slowly. Claire coming home late, Arabic notes on the kitchen counter, cassette tapes scattered beside Lily's toys. You knew my wife, he said quietly. Naomi lowered her eyes. She taught me. The words landed softly, but somehow they hit harder than anything else that night. Ethan suddenly remembered Claire talking once about a young woman with a remarkable ear for language. Quiet, brilliant, too humble to realize how intelligent she really was. At the time, Ethan had barely listened. He had been buried inside mergers, flights, investors, conference calls. Another memory surfaced painfully after that. Claire standing beside the piano one winter night saying, "Some people survive by becoming invisible, Ethan." He had not understood what she meant then. Looking at Naomi now, he finally did. Lily gently tugged Naomi's sleeve again. "Can you sing it?" she asked hopefully. Naomi immediately looked uncomfortable. "I do not think your father would want that." "Please," Lily whispered. Ethan opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out, because truthfully he did want it, more than he could explain. Naomi looked toward the rain-covered windows for a moment as though searching for courage somewhere outside the building. Then very softly, almost too softly to hear, she began singing in Arabic. The room changed instantly. The language flowed gently through the candlelit silence like something old and familiar returning home. Even the attorneys stopped typing. Ethan felt his chest tighten so suddenly he could barely breathe. Claire used to sing that exact lullaby while cooking Sunday breakfast in their penthouse kitchen. Lily slowly leaned against Naomi's side without even realizing it. Safe again. Calm again. Across the room, Sheikh Rahman lowered his head respectfully. "Your wife had a beautiful voice," he said quietly to Ethan. Ethan swallowed hard. "She did." Naomi finished the final line of the song almost in a whisper. Silence followed afterward. Deep silence. The kind that stayed in the walls long after words disappeared. Then Lily looked up at Naomi and smiled sleepily. "Mommy trusted you," she whispered. Naomi's expression broke for the first time that night. Just slightly, but Ethan saw it. And somehow, in that small, fragile moment, he realized the quiet waitress standing beside his daughter had been carrying grief too. The silence after the song felt sacred somehow. Nobody inside the private dining room seemed willing to disturb it. Outside, rain continued sliding down the tall Manhattan windows in silver streaks, while candlelight flickered softly across untouched wine glasses and abandoned contracts. Ethan Caldwell stood near the end of the table, watching Naomi Brooks with an expression he no longer bothered hiding. Confusion, curiosity, and something dangerously close to trust. Naomi slowly stepped back as if trying to disappear into the background again. "I should return to work," she said quietly. Her voice remained calm, but Ethan noticed the slight tremble in her fingers as she reached for the coffee tray. "Wait." The word came out faster than he intended. Naomi paused. So did Lily. Ethan exhaled slowly, loosening his tie for the first time that evening. "Claire never mentioned names," he admitted softly. "But she used to talk about a student who could hear 5 dialects in a single sentence." Naomi looked down at the floor. She exaggerated. "No, Sheikh Rahman interrupted gently. I do not think she did." The older billionaire adjusted the cuff of his sleeve before looking directly at Ethan. "Your wife once told me that language reveals character faster than money ever will." Ethan lowered his eyes briefly. That sounded exactly like Claire. The realization hurt more than he expected. Across the room, one of Ethan's attorneys approached, carefully holding a folder. "Sir," he said quietly, "we confirmed everything. Mr. Hale rerouted several international licensing clauses through a shell corporation." Ethan nodded once without emotion. "Handle it." The attorney stepped away immediately. Naomi remained still beside the table, her expression unreadable. But Ethan noticed she did not look satisfied. She looked tired, deeply tired, the kind of tired people carried when life forced them to stay strong for too long. Lily suddenly tugged Naomi's hand again. "Are you coming tomorrow too?" she asked hopefully. Naomi smiled softly. "I work most evenings." "Good," Lily whispered, "because Daddy never smiles at dinner." Ethan blinked in surprise. Several executives awkwardly looked away. Naomi glanced toward him carefully, almost apologetically, but Ethan surprised himself by laughing quietly under his breath. A real laugh, brief, rusted from disuse. Lily smiled proudly like she had accomplished something important. "There it is," she whispered. Naomi's eyes softened at once. Ethan noticed that too. Then something unexpected happened. The restaurant manager hurried nervously toward Naomi from across the dining room. "Naomi," he whispered urgently, "Table 12 is asking for you again." Naomi immediately straightened. Professional, composed, invisible once more. "I should go," she said quietly. But before she could leave, Ethan spoke again. "Why did Claire trust you?" Naomi stopped walking. The question lingered heavily between them. Even the rain seemed quieter now. Naomi slowly turned back toward him. "Because she knew what it felt like to be unheard," she answered softly. Ethan felt the words settle somewhere deep inside him. Claire had spent years trying to tell him that success was, making him emotionally absent long before her accident ever happened. He just had not listened carefully enough. Naomi gently released Lily's hand and reached into the pocket of her apron. "Your daughter dropped this at the train station," she said, placing a small cassette tape onto the table. Ethan stared at it instantly. Claire's handwriting covered the faded label in blue ink. "For Lily. Rainy days." Ethan's throat tightened painfully. He thought that tape had been lost forever. Naomi stepped back toward the doorway then, quiet as candlelight. But before she disappeared into the restaurant crowd, Lily's small voice stopped her one last time. "Miss Naomi?" Naomi looked back. Lily smiled softly. "Mommy would have liked you." Naomi Brooks stood motionless near the doorway after Lily's words settled softly across the room. "Mommy would have liked you." Such a small sentence. Yet somehow it left Ethan Caldwell unable to speak for several seconds. He watched Naomi carefully beneath the warm chandelier light and noticed the way her eyes lowered immediately, almost as though kindness made her uncomfortable. "Good night, Lily," Naomi whispered gently. Then she disappeared back into the restaurant crowd before Ethan could stop her again. The room felt emptier the second she left. Ethan looked down at the cassette tape still resting in his hand. The faded blue ink of Claire's handwriting blurred slightly as old memories pushed forward all at once. Sunday mornings. Arabic lullabies drifting through their penthouse kitchen. Claire laughing softly while Lily danced barefoot across marble floors. He had buried those memories beneath work for so long that hearing the song tonight felt like opening a sealed room inside himself. "Daddy." Lily tugged lightly on his sleeve. Ethan blinked. "Yes, sweetheart. Why does Miss Naomi look sad all the time?" The question caught him off guard completely. Ethan glanced toward the dining room where Naomi moved silently between tables carrying trays beneath soft golden lights. Most people would only notice the uniform, the quietness, the careful smile. But Lily had inherited Claire's gift for seeing deeper than appearances. "Sometimes," Ethan answered slowly, "people carry heavy things quietly." Lily nodded as though she understood more than most adults ever could. Across the table, Sheikh Rahman stood and adjusted his dark coat. "Mr. Caldwell," he said calmly, "your daughter sees truth very clearly." Ethan gave a small, exhausted smile. "She gets that from her mother." The sheik looked toward Naomi once more before lowering his voice. Do not make the mistake of confusing humility with weakness. Then he left quietly with his legal team, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts for the first time all evening. The restaurant slowly returned to normal around them. Glasses clinked softly. Jazz music drifted through the air again. But Ethan no longer felt connected to any of it. His attention kept returning to Naomi. The way she listened before speaking. The way she noticed details nobody else saw. The way Lily instinctively trusted her. Ethan had spent most of his life surrounded by loud people. Investors, executives, politicians, people who constantly needed to prove importance. Naomi was different. Her silence felt stronger than most voices he knew. "Sir," one of Ethan's security men approached carefully. "We finished reviewing Victor Hale's communications." Ethan looked up slowly. "And?" There were dozens of encrypted calls over the last 6 months. Most came from inside this building. Ethan's expression darkened slightly. "Inside the restaurant?" "Yes, sir." Ethan's eyes instinctively moved toward the hallway leading to the employee area. Then another realization hit him quietly. Naomi had overheard the betrayal because she had been working nearby long enough to notice patterns nobody else cared about. Invisible people often saw everything. Lily suddenly yawned beside him and leaned against his arm sleepily. Ethan gently brushed hair away from her face. "Ready to go home?" Lily nodded slowly. Then she looked toward the dining room again. "Can Miss Naomi come visit sometime?" Ethan hesitated. Normally, he would have said no automatically. Boundaries, privacy, security. His old life depended on distance. But tonight something inside him felt different. Softer perhaps, or simply tired of being alone. Before Ethan could answer, he noticed Naomi near the service station speaking quietly into an old flip phone. Her expression changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. Then she grabbed her coat and hurried toward the back exit into the rain without even clocking out. Ethan Caldwell noticed the fear in Naomi Brooks's face before she could hide it. 1 second, she had been quietly clearing empty glasses near the service station. The next, she was already pulling on her dark coat with trembling hands while rain battered the restaurant windows behind her. "Daddy?" Lily whispered softly. "Something is wrong." Ethan did not answer immediately. He was already watching Naomi disappear through the back exit into the stormy Manhattan night. "Take Lily to the car," he quietly told his security team. "I will be there in 5 minutes." "Sir, 5 minutes." His tone ended the discussion instantly. Ethan grabbed his coat and stepped outside into the cold rain. The alley behind the restaurant smelled faintly of wet concrete and city exhaust. Neon reflections shimmered across puddles, while distant taxi horns echoed through the streets. Ahead of him, Naomi stood beneath the fire escape stairs with her phone pressed tightly against her ear. "I said I am trying," she whispered shakily. "Please just give me until Friday." Ethan stopped walking. He had never heard fear in her voice before. Naomi always sounded calm, careful, controlled. But not now. "I know he needs the treatment," she continued softly, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. "I know." Ethan quietly stepped back into the shadows before she noticed him. The call ended a few seconds later. Naomi lowered the phone slowly and pressed both hands against her face, as though trying to hold herself together. Then Ethan heard something that made his chest tighten unexpectedly. "Aqui é sob." Small, quickly hidden, but real. Naomi took a shaky breath and leaned against the brick wall beneath the fire escape. For the first time since meeting her, she looked exhausted instead of composed. Human instead of invisible. Ethan slowly stepped forward then, his dress shoes splashing softly against rainwater. Naomi immediately straightened when she saw him wiping her face quickly. "I am sorry, sir," she said at once, embarrassed. "I did not mean to leave during your dinner." Ethan ignored the apology entirely. "Who needs treatment?" Naomi froze. Silence stretched between them while rain drummed softly overhead. Ethan loosened his tie again, waiting patiently this time instead of demanding answers the way he usually would. Naomi lowered her eyes. "My younger brother," she admitted quietly. "Marcus." Ethan listened carefully. He has kidney failure. The words landed heavily in the cold night air. Naomi forced a small smile after saying it, the kind people used when life stopped giving them good options. Insurance only covers part of it. Ethan suddenly understood everything. The extra shifts, the exhaustion behind her eyes, the old flip phone, the way she carried intelligence like something hidden instead of celebrated. Naomi had not stayed invisible because she lacked brilliance. She stayed invisible because survival did not leave room for anything else. Ethan looked at her quietly for several long seconds. Then he asked the one question that mattered most. Why did you not ask for help tonight? Naomi gave a tired laugh beneath the rain. Because people like me do not usually get invited to billionaire tables unless we are carrying coffee. Rain continued falling softly between the buildings while Ethan Caldwell stood silently beneath the fire escape, staring at Naomi Brooks as though he were seeing her clearly for the first time. Not as a waitress. Not as the quiet woman carrying coffee through crowded rooms, but as someone who had been carrying an impossible amount of weight without asking anyone to notice. Naomi looked away first, embarrassed by her own honesty. I should get back inside, she whispered softly. My manager already thinks I disappear too much. Ethan did not move. How much? Naomi frowned slightly. Excuse me? For your brother's treatment, Ethan said calmly. Naomi immediately shook her head. No, the answer came too fast. Defensive. Automatic. Ethan almost smiled despite the rain. Claire used to do the same thing whenever life became too painful. Refuse help before it could become pity. Naomi, Ethan said quietly, you saved my company tonight. I corrected a translation. You saved my daughter too. That made her fall silent. Ethan stepped slightly closer beneath the dim alley light. Lily has barely spoken to anyone about Claire in over a year, he admitted softly. Tonight she smiled. She sang. She trusted someone again. Naomi lowered her eyes. She misses her mother. Ethan nodded once. So do I. The honesty in his voice surprised both of them. For years Ethan had buried grief beneath business deals. Late flights, endless meetings, and perfectly tailored suits. But somehow this quiet woman standing in the rain made pretending feel pointless. Naomi looked toward the glowing restaurant windows for a moment before speaking again. Claire used to tell me something, she whispered. She said grief becomes heavier when people carry it alone. Ethan felt the words settle deeply inside him. That sounded exactly like Claire. Soft wisdom hidden inside ordinary sentences. A black car slowly pulled up beside the alley then. Ethan's driver stepped out holding an umbrella, but Ethan barely noticed. His attention remained fixed on Naomi. Tomorrow morning, he said calmly, a specialist from Sinclair Medical will call you about your brother. Naomi's eyes widened instantly. No, I cannot accept that. Yes, Ethan answered quietly. You can. Rainwater slid down the sleeves of Naomi's coat while emotion flickered across her face too quickly to hide now. Bride. Fear. Exhaustion. Hope. Ethan recognized all of it because, for the first time in years, he felt some of those things too. Inside the car, Lily suddenly pressed her face against the window and waved excitedly at Naomi. Naomi smiled softly despite herself and waved back. Ethan watched the moment carefully. Small things revealed truth. And the truth was simple now. Lily trusted Naomi naturally. The way children trust warmth before adults complicate it. Naomi finally looked back toward Ethan. Why are you helping me? She asked quietly. Ethan glanced toward the rain-covered skyline above Manhattan before answering. Because tonight, he said softly. A woman everyone ignored reminded me what kind of person my wife believed I could still become. Naomi stood speechless beneath the falling rain while Ethan opened the car door for his daughter. Before stepping inside, he paused one final time. And Naomi? She looked up. Ethan gave the smallest real smile she had seen all night. Your translator was not the only liar in that room. Naomi frowned slightly. Ethan looked down at his expensive suit, then back at her tired eyes. I have been pretending I stopped needing people a long time ago.